Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 18.1 released to the public this week, and iOS 18.2 Beta 1 released last week to developers. But there's even more features to talk about since the initial iOS 18.2 Beta 1 is out. What's new video, and also we'll talk about the overall experience, since many people have been using 18.1 for a little while now, and 18.2. We'll talk about your experience as well based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video, there's over 27,000 votes and 385 comments. I've gone through all the comments to see what the overall experience is like according to you, and we'll read some of your comments toward the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. Now, as far as news this week, well, Nintendo actually released a new iPhone app. So if we go to the App Store, you can see it here. It's going to reload. There we go, Nintendo Music. And it says, enjoy Nintendo game music. So you can listen to your favorite game music and scroll through here, everything from Kirby to Zelda to Animal Crossing to Yoshi's Island, and much more, but you do have to have a Nintendo Online account to listen to it. Also in the App Store, it's apparently going to get an update to reviews according to 9to5Mac, who saw an unreleased article which explains how there's a new AI-based summary coming soon to the App Store. These would be based on reviews that we have and sort of summarize these like we get with Apple Intelligence with our summaries already. So instead of notification summaries, we could have app review summaries that update in real time, giving us a better overview of what it's like, depending on how many ratings there are, and they can update in real time based on that. Now, one of my favorite apps that I use every day, typically to create thumbnails and more for videos like this, is Pixelmator, and apparently they've sold to Apple. So Apple's actually bought Pixelmator, and hopefully this comes out to be a very good thing, whether that means a new Aperture app or they just continue to make this. But Pixelmator has always been one of my favorites. It's a one-time purchase, and you can just continue to use it. So that's something that I really appreciate about it, and it just updates regularly with a lot of new features, and hopefully Apple keeps that up as well. Apple actually launched a new repair program this week for iPhone 14 Plus. If you have an issue with the rear camera, you'll see here Apple has determined that the rear camera on a very small percentage of iPhone 14 Plus devices may exhibit no preview. Affected devices were manufactured between April 10th, 2023 to April 28th, 2024. So if you have that issue, you got it sort of in between that time, you may want to go to this website, put in your serial number if you're having this issue, and see if you're affected. And if you are, they'll take care of it. So I'll link this in the description below if you want to check it out yourself. Now, if you use Apple's Tap to Pay, that's now live in 5 more countries that Apple announced this week. The feature is now live in Austria, the Czech Republic, Ireland, Romania, and Sweden. So that's not just Tap to Pay for something at a terminal, but it allows others to pay you directly on your phone. If you're a business, someone else can pay you directly to your phone, and that should work. Apple's rolling that out in more and more places around the world. Now, with iOS 18.2 Beta 1, many people have been waiting to try out Image Playground. Under Apple Intelligence, the first time they go in, they had to request access to Image Playground and Genmoji. This has taken a while for some people. Some people are still waiting, and Apple's actually responded saying that it could take a while, as in a couple of weeks. So they will be rolling this out. I've seen more and more people gain access to it. I didn't do anything special. I just signed up right away, and I was able to get in, thankfully. So then I could share it with you. But either way, it looks like many people are getting it, so hang in there if you're not getting it, but you do need to be in the United States, or at least have your language set to English in the United States to try it out. Now, as far as new features this week, well, there is a new feature that I left out in my iOS 18.1 is out what's new video. And on the iPad with Apple Music, Apple has finally added the new menu bar at the top if you want to use it. So they've left the traditional sidebar here, but if you want to use the top bar, just tap the button there and you can go into that. You can rearrange this, scroll through it, press and hold, and then maybe you want to get rid of some of these. So we'll get rid of some of them. You'll see it shrink down. We can add some back, and we can rearrange them as well. So we can rearrange them here or rearrange them on the side by pressing and holding. So if you want to do that, you can do that now and set it up however you'd like. So that's something they added in 18.1 on the iPad. Something else that's new is if you go into accessibility for the first time, so go into accessibility, you'll get a prompt to allow notifications, just like it's a separate app. I took a screenshot of this when it actually popped up. It says accessibility settings would like to send you notifications. So thanks to Brom for sending this along. This actually showed up for me just today when I opened it on my iPhone 11. Now with Apple CarPlay, I'm connected to one of my iPhones here. Apple CarPlay gets an update with Siri, and I've shown that before if you have Apple Intelligence enabled. Press and hold, you've got this nice outline, but something else I didn't mention that I noticed later on when I was using it is when you send a message, there's a nice new animation to go along with this. Send a message to Zach Zolo. You'll see it down here. It has this really nice animation, and this is just an example of using Apple CarPlay on iOS 18.1 with Apple Intelligence. When it goes to send, it actually has it outlined here as well. So we can cancel that, and it's just a nice new animation to go along with Apple Intelligence. Back in Safari, if we go to maybe the Pixelmator website where they said they're selling to Apple, if we go to the options here and then go to hide distracting items, we can now scroll and then hide things individually. So tap to hide, scroll down, tap and hide. We can just scroll through everything. This is much faster than before, and it works seamlessly now. It's way easier to just hide things on an entire page. Within Mail on iOS 18.2 Beta 1, if you're in something that has a category, there's a new icon here where we can clear it from a category. So you'll see I'm under Primary, I can tap Clear, and then it clears everything out. It's just a new way to do that and looks a little bit different. On Halloween, we actually had an update on the Apple Watch. If you were using the Snoopy watch face, and if we set the Snoopy watch face, there was a new animation that was showing up for Halloween for many people. So it was scrolling through a couple different animations. So if maybe we wake it back up, see what we've got. Sometimes there's a new animation that actually was Halloween themed. So maybe we'll see this on Christmas and other holidays, but at this point it looks like it's just for Halloween. So there were a few different ones, and some people were able to capture this, but for the most part, it would scroll through with Charlie Brown's Great Pumpkin and other things. Now, when it comes to iOS 18.2 Beta 1, this is next level as far as the overall versions of Apple Intelligence. This is when we'll really start to see what it can do with things such as visual intelligence. So maybe we'll go ahead and capture something here. Let's see if it recognizes if this is an iPhone 16 Pro Max or not. So we'll go ahead and search with Google. It searches it and finds it right away. However, it's showing iPhone 13 as well as 16 Pro Max. So as this gets better, this is going to take iPhone to the next level with not only visual recognition, but probably visual directions, more information about businesses, and much more. So if you want to ask a question about something with ChatGPT, it's working. We'll give it just a second here, and it will give us much more information than we ever had before. This is probably one of my favorite things, and you'll see it says this image shows the back of a smartphone with a triple camera setup, typical of recent iPhone models. So it didn't get exactly what it was. Well, as this gets smarter and smarter, this is going to be something that I think is extremely helpful. Probably one of the most helpful features that many people were not talking about. So I would imagine this will be on all Apple Intelligence devices. You'll be able to use that, and then actually use Apple Intelligence with visual recognition, and of course, Genmoji and Image Playground. Now, when it comes to Genmoji, there's a couple things I wanted to mention about that. If we go into Messages, within Messages, you'll see I still have that bug with my emoji. I've tried to fix this, and no matter what I do, it's not working properly. However, I can go in and create maybe a Genmoji here. So maybe a star with eyes, and we'll see what it comes up with. So we'll give it just a moment. You can do this with objects and people as well, but not things that are well known. So maybe not a branded thing, such as something from Nintendo or Porsche, such as a car. So you'll see here's something else. We'll go ahead and add this one, and then we can add it to our conversation. So this is something we can use. However, it does show up in recents for some people. However, this is a problematic thing for me as it's not showing properly. So I've tried to fix this. I've tried removing the keyboard, tried adding it, and we'll talk about bugs in a little bit. And we also have the option to press and hold. We can drag it wherever we'd like. We can copy and paste it that way. And we can also get details on some of the Genmoji or emoji that people send and who sent them. But I would have to have one sent from someone else. Now, Image Playground is something that I'm a little bit up in the air about. While it does work, you'll see I created a few different odd things here, playing around. You'll see here's my picture, and you can create maybe myself with a beret, and then go to maybe put fantasy in the summer. So you can continue to add to this, and as you play around with this a little bit more, it looks pretty good. Scroll through, and of course you can change out the picture that you're using, but it continues to get that. And sometimes it's really good, other times it's a little weird, but I think this is something that will really improve a lot and goes along with what we have on the iPad, where you can actually create an image right in Notes. So that's something I really appreciate. You can do it on here as well. And you'll see here, after I drew sort of an odd house, tap the little wand button, you've got image wand, and then you can actually replace this. So if I want to circle it, I can replace it with a few different words. A house with a small door, and then send it. Then you can add this to any note you're creating. So as we go up here, we'll give it just a second. It creates it and then adds it to whatever you'd like. So you can continue to use these, put them in your notes. And I think this will be very helpful if you want to continue to use something like this. Maybe you're working on a presentation. Maybe we need to add a window. There we go. It says unable to generate an image with this description. Images involving people are not supported. So it is still a little bit buggy. I'm not sure why it can't add a window. We'll see. And it still won't do it. So I think they'll fix this going on, but this phone gets really hot when you're actually using Apple Intelligence. So it uses a lot of power, probably a lot more than people think. As far as the next versions and next level of iOS, well, it's going to mostly be Apple Intelligence features. Apple will continue to add more features, even to older devices. We've seen some of that with call recording, and they'll roll out around the world. But at this point, they're focused on Apple Intelligence and making useful AI on your phone. So that's something that I think going forward, Apple's going to focus on, for better or for worse. When it comes to releases this week, a couple things I wanted to mention is Apple pushed out a carrier bundle for people having issues with RCS in Canada using the network called Kudo. So if you're on that network, it looks like if you go into your settings, maybe you go into general, some people are actually getting a carrier update. If you're not seeing it, go into general, go into about, and go to carrier. Sometimes it will pop up there and work for you right away. Install the carrier update and hopefully it fixes RCS. As far as other updates this week, well, we did get an AirPods update, not only to AirPods Pro 2 that we had before that brought in the new hearing features, but we also got the same update to AirPods 4. AirPods 4 gained the same version of 7B19, but unfortunately those hearing options are not there. Maybe they'll add them in the future. I think it would be great since we have maybe a little bit of ambient noise around them and it could just boost voices with conversations, but we're not sure if they're going to do that yet. But they did update them, and you should have that now if you have AirPods 4 or AirPods 4 with noise cancellation. So between Monday or Wednesday, I would expect iOS 18.2 Beta 2, maybe Public Beta 1 as well, depending on its overall state of completeness. Hopefully we'll see that very soon. Apple could push it out, but we do know for a fact that it's coming out in December. This is actually according to Apple in a newsroom article that they released. So if we go into that article, you'll see when they released Apple Intelligence on iOS 18.1, they also mentioned where it would be launching a little bit later and when. So it's going to be launching in December. So if we just look for December here, scroll down, we'll find it here, and it says new Apple Intelligence features will be available in December. So we know that for a fact. They didn't give a specific date, but based on what we had last year with iOS 17.2, that was on December 11th. So probably sometime around that time frame, or maybe December 9th, since it's a Monday, that's probably when we'll see iOS 18.2 released to the public. So I would expect a few betas in between, and then the final release in December. It will also roll out to a few other areas such as English in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, and the UK. So as long as they're set to English, it should work, and those areas should be available in December, it looks like. Now, when it's coming to other places, we don't really know yet. Maybe Apple will have some announcements in between. When it comes to overall bugs, well, iOS 18.1 seems to be pretty stable overall, according to many of you. I haven't seen too many issues with it, with the exception of maybe some notifications not coming through or making noise. However, I don't know if people are trying out the focus mode or the new focus mode that actually uses Apple Intelligence, but in general, most people are saying it's pretty stable. So that's great news. Battery life is something else we'll talk about in just a moment, but iOS 18.2 Beta 1 also seems to be okay for most people, but it definitely has a lot more bugs. For example, voice dictation is getting a lot wrong for me, so when I'm maybe typing something, if we go into notes, and maybe we'll go in here, this is a new note talking about iOS 18.2 Beta 1 on iPhone 16 Pro Max. And of course it works fine there, but sometimes it messes up and gets pretty obvious things wrong. So I'm not sure why, but from time to time it will be completely off from what I've said. Some other people are saying videos aren't sending properly through messages, whether that's on iMessage or RCS. Also, alarm clocks are setting the wrong time for some people. So they're asking them maybe to set an alarm for 7 in the morning, and it will just repeat 5 a.m. or a different time. Many people have said there's still stutters in this update, even on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I haven't seen too many, but there's definitely some from time to time. Ramping up ProMotion, you can see maybe a few there. And as far as CarPlay goes, well, it's definitely problematic. On my phone, I've actually used it with my car, and it dropped the other day. Completely dropped audio. It disconnected about 4 times from my car, reconnected on its own, but disconnected for no reason. Music stopped playing, so I had to go into music, close it out, go back in, and then it worked again. So definitely some odd issues with CarPlay. One of the biggest issues I'm having is with mail. Mail seems to be very problematic for me. I'm not getting notifications about it. So in particular, I get notifications from Canary Mail that I've been using alongside this just in case, since this is on my main phone. But going into different inboxes, I'm just not getting notifications. I never get the notification badge, even though I have those settings enabled. Also, another thing I've experienced was a little odd is I went into my notifications, swiped them off the screen, press and hold on the screen like this, tried to change the wallpaper, and it completely crashed the phone. It happened to me a couple times, so it's definitely an issue for me, and others are having odd crashes as well. Again, this is beta 1 and an early version, so it's not unexpected, but it is something worth mentioning. As far as other issues, well, I already showed you the issue I had in messages with the emoji keyboard, and that's pretty much it as far as that goes. When it comes to battery life, well, battery life on iOS 18.1 is good for a lot of people if it's done processing. Many people have had the overall update processing in the background. If they go into settings, then you go to battery. Under battery, many people are saying that it's showing up that it's still processing. This can take over a week sometimes. So I tell most people give it over a week to stabilize, then see if it improves. Also, many people have said that Apple Intelligence seems to be using a lot of power. On devices that don't support it, such as the iPhone 11, with it not there, it seems to be very good battery life, but devices with Apple Intelligence enabled seem to be having issues as it's probably processing a lot in the background. So again, give it some time. But as far as the overall numbers when it comes to that, let's take a look. And this is thanks to Abhishek for sending in his battery on an iPhone 11 Pro Max with 77% battery health. You'll see he actually had 8 hours and 56 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 17 minutes of screen off time, and had to charge it to get that amount of power. So you'll see 8 hours and 11 minutes. Again, it's over 100%, so it had to be charged. So maybe 6 hours of screen on time, but again, that's on a phone with 77% battery health. Most people are still able to get through the day, but if they're running Apple Intelligence heavily or a lot of processes are going on in the background, it definitely seems to be using a lot of power. iOS 18.2 Beta 1 has been pretty terrible for me as far as battery. If we take a look at battery health, I'm at 100% with 37 cycles. And you can see that here in Coconut Battery. And if we take a look at the last 10 days, yesterday I had 2 hours and 4 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 29 minutes of screen idle time, and used 75% of my battery. I'm getting 3 to 4 hours, which is pretty terrible. The day before, 5 hours and 1 minute, and I used about 80 or 90% of my battery. Some days it's better than others, but in general, this has been charged today. You'll see last charged to 96% at 4:54 p.m. When it comes to the overall performance seems to be pretty good. Like I mentioned, iOS 18.1 seems to be a little bit better with stability. Overall speed seems to be good. Most people report it's quite good, even on older devices. So if we go into music on this device, it was already open, still in RAM, so that's a good sign. Everything's loading nice and fast, scrolling is smooth, and just using it in general seems to be a good experience. So depending on how you're using it and what you're using, seems to be pretty decent. As far as the heat of the device, let's take a look since they've been running. As I mentioned with Image Playground, it did get warm, but it cooled down quickly. But we'll take a look at 18.1 and 18.2. And on iOS 18.2 on the 16 Pro Max with Beta 1, we're at about 33 degrees Celsius. And on iPhone 16 Pro Max with iOS 18.1, we're at about 28 5 degrees Celsius is the highest I've seen. So in general, much better on 18.1, but we haven't been using that as much either. But it seems to be staying nice and cool, at least on the newer phones. Some people do report it gets warm, but it's going to get warm if you're using cleanup in photos or any Apple Intelligence feature. It's definitely going to get hot. As far as the overall benchmarks, we have iOS 18.1 public release on the iPhone 16 Pro Max and iPhone 11, and we have iOS 18.2 Beta 1 on the 16 Pro Max here on the right. iOS 18.1 seems to score quite well on many devices. It's some of the highest scores I've ever seen. 18.2 is a little bit lower, but I do expect it to get a little bit better over the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the final release. Now, as far as what you had to say, let's take a look at some of the comments. LCR935 said, iOS 18.1 on my 15 Pro has been pretty awful for my battery. I'm at 100% battery health and do about 2 to 3 hours of light to medium use of screen time per day, and I'm using 60 to 80% of my battery by 3 in the afternoon since installing on Monday. Prior release, I'd only be using 30 to 40% of my battery throughout the day. Pretty noticeable jump for me. Other than that, everything seems pretty stable, although I haven't used much of the new Apple Intelligence features yet. Daily Cruise 8550 said, 16 Pro Max, 18.1 battery life seems to be a little worse, but they say it actually takes a week or so after an update to go back to normal, so we shall see. Overall, no bugs found that I've noticed. iPhone 11 on 17.7.1 operating without any problem. I plan to stay on this version as it has 0 bugs for me. Noah Messer 5023 said, currently running iOS 18.2 Beta 1 on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. While the experience has been generally satisfactory, it is evident that this is an early beta release. The Image Playground, Genmoji, and Image Wand features are undoubtedly enjoyable to utilize. However, the battery life has been significantly compromised, which is unsurprising given the beta nature of the software. The performance has been satisfactory with occasional stutters, lag, and minor UI glitches. Vales Merelda said, iPhone 12 user here, definitely lots of improvements. First, the animations of going in and out of an app is smoother. App performance improved a lot. The widget on the home screen after swiping right to the left side is now blurred. The animation of Control Center is also improved. Battery life, I don't know if it's improved, but currently I'm surviving with 77% battery health, but overall iOS 18.1 is a great update. GRT1N said, 18.1 on my 15 Pro Max and battery is horrible. By noon I'm having to charge and that's something I've never had to do. Battery health is at 88% also. Gennaro Sajudo says, hopefully I said that properly, jumped from 17.6.1 to 18.1 on my iPhone 13 Pro Max and I feel like the battery has improved over what I had. Also no issues at all, works perfectly. iOS 18.1 seems to be a pretty decent update overall. However, Apple Intelligence definitely seems to use a lot more power than we expected. But again, that should take them another week or so and then hopefully stabilize. We'll have to wait and see what it's like though. iOS 18.2 Beta 2 hopefully will be out this coming week with additional features maybe some updates to Siri finally. However, that's not supposed to be until next year where Siri is brought to the next level. So that's going to take a little time to actually see that. So that's everything in iOS 18.1 and iOS 18.2 Beta 1. If you found any additional features I haven't mentioned in the video, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.